All right. So I recently had a pretty lengthy conversation with a friend of mine who had asked me a question that I'm sure tends to hold a lot of people back from taking their first steps into having a meaningful spiritual practice, more specifically about how one should go about beginning a spiritual practice within Hellenism. Now, I'm sure that this is a hindrance for so many people, especially those who come from a background in Christianity or some other form of monotheistic religion. I see that many people today tend to pick a single deity that they believe they feel close to, and I'm not saying that this is wrong, but why are you stopping there? To me, it seems like aspects of Christianity or monotheistic faiths are making their way into the pagan community. However, if you can explain this to me, please do so in the comments below. Now, I know that I've covered some of this that I'm going to mention in this video previously in other videos, but I will strive to go more in depth and stay on topic here. Now, getting on with it, the absolute first thing I would suggest in doing is developing some form of daily devotional practice. Now, like I've already said, a lot of people tend to choose a specific deity and focus entirely upon them. Now, I disagree with simply choosing a deity in this manner to devote prayers to, because we tend to influence our decision in choosing the deity based off of our personal preference and our ego. So to remove this from the equation, this is a method you could adapt to your liking. Find or create tokens for the 12 Olympian gods and others that you may want to include in this method. If you have the PGM Tarot, you could remove the deity cards to use them. Also, find some small stones that are similar in size and shape. I suggest an even number, as you'll understand why in just a moment. Paint half of the stones black and the other half white. With an even number, it is a 50-50 chance. Next, spend some time in meditation and prayer, asking Hermes, since he is the messenger of the gods, to guide your hand in the selection. This selection being the deity in which you should devote your prayers and offerings to. Now, after you've spent some time in prayer and meditation, using one hand select the token for the deity, or picking the card, and the other hand select a stone. Of course, you should not look while you make the selection, since that would defeat the purpose of all of this. If you draw a black stone with the card or token, remove the token from the remainder and repeat the process. When you make your token selection and draw a white stone with it, you have your answer. Now, this could be taken a step further, dividing the deities into gods and goddesses, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and to do this, you would simply repeat the process for the god selection and the goddess selection. You can also find another method of determining this in the book Reclaim the Power of the Witch by Monty Plaisance, which I'll link to in the description below. Now, but what do you do after you've got the deities in which you're going to devote your daily prayers to? What if you have no artistic ability to write your own daily devotional prayer? You can simply utilize the Orphic hymns for this, as they have been utilized as prayers as far back as the 2nd or 3rd century. It is also a good idea to give offerings with your daily hymn. Daily offerings should consist of a form of bread, wine, and incense, and I will share with you specific prayers I adapted from the Homeric hymns while giving them. When it comes to the Orphic hymns themselves, you can use the Thomas Taylor translations, which are in the public domain, or you can purchase any of the books out there with modern translations. I personally like the Orphic hymns by Patrick Dunn, which I'll also link in the description. So after you have recited an Orphic hymn to a deity, raise your food offering. This can be anything from a piece of bread to a cracker, or if you cannot afford that, a pinch of salt. With your food offering raised, you then recite your prayer. This is the adapted version that I have used in the past. Accept from me this food, that you may shape the course of my life with luminous light, and make it abundant with good things. Deliver me from all sickness and evils. After reciting your prayer, place the food offering onto the altar. Raise your offering of wine, or if you cannot obtain wine for whatever reason, use clean water. With your libation raised, pray out loud. This is the adapted prayer that I've used in the past. Accept from me this wine, that when my soul rages for worldly things, that I may be delivered and purified. Once you're done with your prayer, simply pour your libation into your bowl on the altar. Finally, raise your incense offering. For this, I prefer to use Nag Champa stick incense, as it is a pleasant odor and inexpensive. With your incense raised, pray your prayer out loud. This is the final prayer that I adapted from the Homeric hymns. Accept from me this incense, that you may reveal to me the path of divine guidance, and permit me to gaze upon that precious light, for when I am weary, bring me to the haven of piety with your winds. Now light your incense and place it in its container. You can repeat these steps for additional Orphic hymns or prayers you recite. Now, utilizing all of this, you can successfully establish a daily practice for you to begin your spiritual journey, but let's continue with this and go a little further. Throughout history, cultures all over the world establish a connection with the world that we reside in. They accomplish this through celebrations of the cycles within the world and specific rituals. These cycles include the weekly cycle, the lunar cycle, the solar cycle, and the seasonal cycle, etc. In regards to the cycle of the week, we all know that we have 7 days of the week. Astrologically speaking, the days of the week are assigned to the 7 ancient planets. Now, the 7 ancient planets, being the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, are all attributed to a day of the week. Monday to the Moon, Tuesday to Mars, Wednesday to Mercury, Thursday to Jupiter, Friday to Venus, Saturday to Saturn, and Sunday to the Sun. These planets are also attributed to specific gods, and these are the Moon to Selene, Mars to Aries, Mercury to Hermes, Jupiter to Zeus, Venus to Aphrodite, Saturn to Kronos, and the Sun to Helios. Recognize that each of these deities have at least one Orphic hymn to them. So using the method I already described, you could pray to the god of the day every day as a part of your daily practice. Moving on, let's talk about the lunar cycle. The first thing we can do is look to the works of Hesiod, which gives us specific days of the lunar months that are sacred to specific deities. I won't go over these here since you can find this on your own with a quick Google search or by going to theii.com. Next, we can look to ancient calendars. If you have studied Hellenism to any extent, you have probably heard of the Attic calendar. For those who do not know what this is, it is what we know of the Athenian calendar in ancient Greece. This was a lunar calendar which consisted of 12 months, with the 13th month added approximately every 3 years in order to bring it back into sync with the solar year. There are specific days of the lunar month that are sacred, and you can easily find this information online with a Google search. As for specific rituals pertaining to specific days of the lunar month, go check out echoesfromthetemple.com, and you can see rituals that I've formulated and made public. You can choose to use them as they are or modify them to fit your needs. Now let's look at the solar cycle. There are 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices. An equinox marks a point in which the sun is at an equal point between the northern and southern hemisphere. Then there are the summer solstice, where the sun is at the highest point in the sky, and the winter solstice, where the sun is at the lowest point in the sky. You can find plenty of material on rituals to mark these events. Another way I developed to utilize the solar cycle within one's personal practice is to recognize the moments in which the sun changes from one zodiac sign to another. I had attributed each of the zodiac signs to an Olympian god or goddess, and when the sun enters their corresponding sign, it was their designated month. During their designated month, that deity would take the center of the altar. Now with that, you could simply use the already mentioned recitations of the appropriate Orphic hymn, and then giving offerings. I would recommend making this a special event, as it's not solely a daily devotional practice, and you should put more effort into the ritual. I suggest some form of opening and closing ritual to mark the occasion. With that said, I have a couple different versions of a temple opening and closing, so let me know if that is something you would find useful, and I can make it available on the website. Now, on to the seasonal cycles. These mark the changing of the seasons, and there are modern names for these times. However, I like to look more to the mythological events and what we know of ancient festivals that correlate to the changes. For instance, the spring equinox would mark the time of Persephone's return from the underworld and would be the festival of Anthesteria. Likewise, the fall equinox would mark Persephone's return to the underworld, where she takes her place as Queen of Hades. This festival is known as Thesmophoria. In ancient Greece, the summer solstice marked the new year, and the winter solstice was possibly celebrated by a feast to Poseidon. It is also important to recognize that every Greek city-state had its own calendar and own celebrations. We tend to rely heavily upon the Attic calendar as it survived, where others we only have mere fragments. But we need to recognize that we do not live in ancient Greece, and it is not possible to return completely to the manner in which people lived in ancient Greece. With that said, I don't believe there's harm in creating modern celebrations. I personally would refrain from assigning new meaning to the spring and fall equinox, as the myth of Persephone's abduction is an important one. However, as many of you might remember, I attributed an entirely new meaning to the winter solstice, which I did a video on during the 12 Days of Yule challenge. So if you want to see that, I'll link to it here. I feel that it is important to also state that all prayers or celebrations begin with the prayer to Hestia. This is because Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, and it is through Hestia that the gods are able to receive their offerings. Because of this, it is a good idea to place a lamp or candle on the altar for Hestia, and begin your rituals or prayers by lighting the candle and reciting a prayer to Hestia. To do this, you could simply use the Orphic hymn or the Homeric hymn, or simply create your own. If you would like to see more of the rituals that I have written out, let me know and I'll add them to the website. I also want to note that the rituals I have shared or will share are not part of the Church of Thessaly, but of my own creations while practicing solitarily. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and until next time, may the gods bless you. If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you found this video helpful, share it so others may as well. Be sure to visit echoesfromthetemple.com, where you can see the different projects that I have made public, with the blog and shop where you can find Echoes from the Temple merchandise. See you next time.